voice your opinion during a debate. And
Sorry.
I think that that's fine. And I think that this is something very important to discuss. Because sabse pehle to it teaches you how you can effectively get your point across, which is not just important for debates, but it's important when you're giving interviews because you need to, basically promote and sell yourself, and convince people of why, they should hire you. Then, in persuasive writing, such as when you're making ads, or just it just builds your confidence, right? And then other than that, it tells you how to respect and tolerate opposing opinions. And this is also really important because we're going to have the great debate, right? So I thought it would be nice for everyone to know this. Now, these are just some very basic definitions, but I feel like it's important to define this stuff before I move on, so that everyone has a very clear cut perspective of where we're going with this, right? So, firstly, I'm going to define an opinion so that we know the difference between an opinion and a fact. An opinion is a view or judgment formed about something, not necessarily based on a fact or knowledge. So, now an opinion doesn't necessarily have to be true. It can and it can't make sense. It's from your personal point of view. It's not backed up by facts. I mean, it can be backed up by facts, but it doesn't have to be backed up by facts. Similarly, a debate is different from a speech. A debate is a formal discussion on a particular matter in a public meeting or assembly in which opposing arguments are put forward, and which usually ends with a vote. Now, see, debates are also based on opinions and not on facts, because if a debate was based on a fact, then, it won't actually be a debate क्योंकि कुछ controversy नहीं रहेगी. So it's a controversial topic on which you pick sides and you go ahead. Now, all of this is really important because we're a part of the external relations department, and an external relation is a relation between any two entities, such that if they had not been in this relation beforehand, right? So, knowing how to convince people is important, particularly in light of being in the external relations department, because we have to write these sponsorships, right? And we have to communicate with foreign parties. So, to get our way and to get the sponsorships, we need to know how to skillfully present our line of arguments. Um, Now, why do you need to voice your opinion? um, you need to voice your opinion firstly because you never know what could change. um, Now, many people hold their opinion back because they think that it won't matter or it won't bring about a change, but you have no guarantee that your opinion will be ignored or cast aside. It has just as much of a chance to bring about a change as it has to not bring about a change. So if you speak up, there is very much a possibility that you can generate an alternative you can generate alternative lines of thinking and new perspectives for people. So, which could along the line cause great change, because if you're voicing your opinion about an issue such as feminism and you change even ek bande ka perspective about it, then that's going to have such a great impact in the future, because that person is going to inculcate the same values in their child, who's going to inculcate the same values in their child, and it's just a cycle like that. Then if you're wrong, it will be a learning curve, of course. I strongly believe that embarrassment is genuinely a social construct, right? Like, किसने decide किया कि ये चीज embarrassing है? Like, if you like to do something, go ahead and do it. Shoot your shot, right? So the thing is that if you're wrong, you're going to be corrected, which will fix your perspective. It will allow you to learn, and it will allow you to further refine your opinions for the future, right? Not just this, but it'll also teach you how to patiently and gracefully admit your defeat or when you're wrong. And there's a lot of courage in admitting that, I believe. Um, then you need to voice your opinion because regretting action is better than regretting inaction. I think this is a fundamental principle that we all need to remember in about all walks of life. It's possible that you voice your opinion and then you live to regret it, but it's also possible that you don't say or do absolutely anything and then you regret that, right? And then ultimately, our regrets of inaction are much more severe than those of action. Such as very often we hear people saying कि oh काश मैं ये कर लेता या कर लेती तो ऐसा ना होता. And sometimes it's too when you when you make a move and when you voice your opinion, there's an action that has been taken. There's always a solution to it, but sometimes when there's inaction and you don't make a move, then it's too late to conduct that action and for that to have a similar impact. So it's very, very important to voice your opinion. And then lastly, it spurs self development and self confidence. A lot of people don't voice their opinions because they have a fear of being ridiculed. But when you jump in into the conversation and try to, defend yourself and your line of argument, then you bring out confidence and you overcome the obstacle of fear, which will inevitably make you become a more confident person, as you'll feel more confident and comfortable in speaking. And when you become more comfortable and confident in your speaking, it's not just ke oh ye banda bolte hue confident hai. It builds about an aura of confidence and of assurity around you, which is really really important. Now this is basically the process of what you can do, to effectively voice your opinion in debates. This is a brief overview, so we're going to go about number one, research; number two, body language; number three, turning the table; and number four, emotional appeal. तो सबसे पहले for research. Now, per se, our topic is apples are better than bananas. That's our motion. ठीक है? तो सबसे पहले तो the basics. You have to research your facts. So a fact would be an apple provides this much more nutrition than a banana. Henceforth, an apple is better than a banana, right? And you cannot conduct your debate without facts. I think that's understood. Understood. Excuse me. And then what you have to do is you have to derive and research examples from your daily life, because if you don't have those, so people won't be able to connect with your speech and your debate, and when they're unable to connect with your debate, they'll be unable to support your line of argument. Henceforth, it's very important. So an example would be कि for yay apples and bananas wala topic, if you go about and you're like something that people do in their day-to-day lives, you're like, if you don't eat apples, you'll be unable to do blah blah blah, henceforth apples are better than bananas, or if you're in a desi or a brown environment, and I'm in a desi or brown environment and I'm giving a debate on on career choices, and I'm saying okay, you should explore career choices. Um, and I'm and the example that I can give from daily life would maybe be something like, in brown cultures, the only four career choices are doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure, or something like that, that people can laugh about and relate to. So that's very effective. And then something really, really important is that you watch poetry slam and spoken word poetry videos, because this will help build a rhyme and rhythm in your speech, which is very, very important and captivating. And some YouTube channels that you can do to, get this information from, that you can watch to get this information from, are Prince EA, Button Poetry, and TED Talks. What I do in my debates is very often, of course, I'm not saying that you copy them, but something that I picked up from a Prince EA video went along the lines of, the world has existed for this many years. So if we were to concise that into 24 hours, mankind has been alive for just 3 seconds. So now you can, take that into, you can use this very, very impactful piece of information into several different debates, whether they be about climate and global warming, or about, human development and technology and stuff like that. Then something really important is your body language. Now, debating is not just about speaking. When you can't just effectively get your point across by just speaking. It's a mental game. So the first thing that someone notices when you enter a debate room is your body language. So you need to look confident. That is incredibly very important, because if you need to mentally intimidate your opponent before you start speaking, because then when they're speaking, they're slightly hesitant and they're like, oh my god, this person looks so confident, they're probably going to do a great job, so that plays a great role. How can you look confident? Now you can look confident by, of course, having a good posture, shoulders back, by making eye contact, not just with your judges, but also with your opponents while you're speaking and while they're speaking. And then another thing that you can do is take notes while they're speaking. So this is also, it also plays a great factor when it comes to the intimidation wali baat, because they're like, oh, this person is so smart, they're probably maybe noting down rebuttals to my argument, oh my god, So that's very important. Something else that's important is keeping your hands visible. You need to have lots of hand gestures and hand motions, because you can't just keep your hands straight and expect to give a good debate, because that once again leads to lack of emotion and sentiment, because when you're moving your hands, it shows emphasis basically. And that's really really important. Something else that's important to look confident is not swinging. Now, what I've observed through my debating experience is that whenever people are speaking and they're nervous, they're swinging back and forth, and that just gives the worst impression, because it gives away that you're nervous, um so something that you can do to avoid this that I learned is basically called standing with chicken feet. And how that works is that you basically align both of your heels, you bring them both inwards, and you point your toes outwards. So you're basically standing in a V. And is tarah, if you swing back and forth, so you're more likely to fall, which is why you'll just stop swinging. um, and then what you can, and it improves your balance basically. And then something that's really really important is no fidgeting. So it's recommended by most debate coaches that when you're speaking, you don't have any sort of ponytails, scrunchies, bracelets, around your wrist. You It's also recommended that you don't wear long sleeves, full sleeves, because people tend to fidget on those, and that gives a very very bad impression. So all of that is not recommended at all. The entire essence of this, as I said during the beginning of the slide, was that confidence is equal to intimidation, which is equal to more people listening, therefore, you getting your point across much more effectively in a debate room. Then, number three, turning the table. Now, this is pretty simple. It just means that you not only research from your side, but you also research the line of argument of the opposing side. So, what this will do is that it'll help you gather facts that defy the opposing side's argument, right? If you have been given your motion beforehand, this is highly very recommended. Um, because जो है वो एक तो you can include facts in your rebuttals this way, which is going to be 110% better. But you don't have to just rebuttal them. You can basically just nullify their line of argument before they even come up and give it. So what you can do is go ahead and say something like, now the negative party might say XYZ, but it is scientifically proven that blah blah blah, therefore, even if they had like a large chunk of their debate particularly reserved for this line of argument, you already destroyed it. And if they even if they come up and give that same line of argument, it's not going to have the effect that it would have had you not nullified it beforehand, right? So this is really really impactful. And then, of course, rhetorical questioning. For anyone who doesn't know, rhetorical questions are questions that you don't necessarily expect an answer to. Um, so yeah, rhetorical questions will just provoke thoughts, and they'll lead for people to think in your direction. They'll So if you ask a rhetorical question such as, "Do you really think that blah blah blah?" From your tone and from the way of you frame that question, people will realize that that's not something they're supposed to think, right? So it'll just cause for them to think in your direction, and thus your debate will be more effective. Now, emotional appeal. Now, something that you can do is demonize the opposing side, but not your opponent. Now, you need to keep in mind that when you're debating, you can never attack your opponent. That's wrong, and that's undiplomatic and not recommended in any way, shape, or form. However, you can demonize the opposing side. So I'm going to take the apples and bananas example again, even though this makes very little sense. But what you can say is something like, people who believe that bananas are better than apples are racist because blah blah blah, you know so you're not directly attacking your opponent. So you're not saying my opponents are racist, my opponents are homophobic, my opponents are sexist, but you're just taking that line of argument and you're saying, no, this line of argument is wrong because blah blah blah, and you're basically demonizing them and putting them under a very very negative light. Now, something else that's very important is your fluctuating tone, because if you speak in a very monotonous way, nobody's going to listen to you, because there's no emotion. There's Even if you have the most interesting information, the most factual, the most correct information, nobody is going to listen to you if you don't emphasize on certain words, if you're not sharp with certain words, so you have to fluctuate your tone like that just so people keep their interest and henceforth listen to your debate, um, and vote on your side of the motion. Then you need to use snuck premises. Now, snuck premises basically mean using snuck premises basically means that you simply introduce the exact point of contention using a bit of clever language, such as in the pro-life, pro-choice debate. Um, people uh, pro-lifers, instead of saying something like, do you think it is okay to kill a fetus, tend to say, do you think it's okay to kill a baby, and now using the word baby invokes sentiments and emotions, and it's not really accurate, because you are killing a fetus and not a baby. But they've used a snuck premise and they've convinced everyone of this particular thing, right? So when you use a snuck premise, finding a hole in the argument becomes really, really hard for your opponent. So it's highly very recommended that you use this. And then of course persuasive words, these have much more of the mental and psychological impact. When you're talking to people and you go, I'm sure you all know that, I'm sure you can all see that, that makes them feel like, oh, what you're saying is very, very obvious and they should see that, so they believe you. Then some important debate tactics I've mentioned right here. Now, first and foremostly using snuck premises that I've already explained. Then you ask leading questions. Now, a leading question is basically a question that prompts and encourages the answer that you want, right? So you already know the answer, but you're going to ask questions that cause for the audience or the judges or even your opponents to think in accordance to your line of argument. You can frame these in you can frame these to be, for example, isn't it true that blah blah blah, wouldn't you agree that xyz? So is तरह करके. Then something that you can do is state the resolution very often. Now oftentimes debaters, they state the resolution or the motion at the beginning of their speech. So they'll be like, the motion of today's debate is apples are better than bananas, right? However, very often or sometimes judges don't remember the resolution or the motion, or even if they do, it's just important to reiterate it so that you show a constant correlation between what you're saying and the motion. So you can you can basically draw a direct link between them and tell everyone, okay, I am sticking to the motion and I'm right, basically. So many people just end their debate as it is. However, if you end your debate and then you add a add an extra sentence in which you reiterate the resolution, so you say something like, so you can confidently vote uh, for apples being better than bananas, then that's going to reiterate the resolution, right? And that's just going to be very, very impactful. Now, something else that's good is even if arguments, right? Uh, we all have to agree that at the end of the day, your opposing side is going to present some valuable, some strong arguments. That is bound to happen. So, in such a case, what you have to do is that you have to admit that your opponent has given a valid argument, right? You can't deny that. You can't rebuttal such an argument. So, you have to, at the end of the day, admit that it is a valid argument. However, what you have to say is, even if you buy their argument, it's still okay to vote for our side because blah blah blah. Okay, so this kind of puts you in a, you lost at first but you lose but you still win sort of situation, because you kind of defied their argument by giving an even if argument. um Now, moving on, how to structure your debate. This is how I've always structured my debate, and it's turned out great for me. It's also recommended that you structure it like this. So, first and foremostly, you give your thesis statement, which is a one or two sentence, which is one or two sentences, and it encapsulates your debate's main points, ideas, or messages. It should always directly give away your stance. So, like, um, i- in your debate, you don't need to hide your stance or like, ooh, I'll tell it aage jaakar suspense. No, that's not recommended at all. You need to be clear cut and concise in debates, right? um so it should directly give away your stance. And the rest of your debate will build up on your thesis statement. It's much like a thesis statement in any essay, right? So for example, your motion is about COVID-19 affecting women more severely than men. So your thesis statement would be: the affirmative party believes that COVID-19 had a much more severe impact on women than men, right? So that. Then number two, you address the problem. What is the issue at hand? What do you want to discuss? So now here you'll discuss why COVID-19 is much more of a problem for women, right? So you can mention something like increase in the rates of domestic violence. So that's you addressing the problem and sub problems basically. Then you move on to build up onto those. Now what you do here is you strengthen your stance and position. You give examples explaining the severity and the gravity of the problem and the issue that you've discussed. So basically you'll mention the gravity of domestic violence, right? um, COVID-19 has increased domestic violence, particularly towards women. And what's the impact of that? Why is that important? Why is that very, very crucial to discuss? Then you give your solution. It's best recommended that you end your debate with a call for action, right? You don't leave it open ended. You don't just be like, okay, this is the problem, full stop. You give a solution to the problem. You, particularly when you're doing MUN debating, this is important. This is very, very integral. um so a call for action in this situation may be building government owned or NGO based safe houses for women where they can live if their own homes are not safe, just something like that. And when you're explaining this, you will have to explain who will fund these safe houses and stuff like that. Now, these are just some extra tips to remember. Speaking louder does not mean that you're right or you're better. If your opponent is speaking louder, you don't need to worry and you don't need to raise your tone or be louder, because aggression is, of course, not recommended. It's considered undiplomatic. You're supposed to give all your arguments in a very diplomatic manner, though you're not ever disrespectful towards your opponent, right? Which is also why Pele I mentioned you demonize the opposing side but not your opponent. Don't get personal, don't ridicule and humiliate your opponent. These are obviously they are in line with what I said beforehand. Um, and then be ready to concede a good point. This goes hand in hand with the even if argument. You do need to recognize and acknowledge when your opposing party gives a good argument. मतलब of course आप अपनी debate में उन्हें comment ना करना शुरू कर दें कि oh my god, the opposing party has given a great argument. No, you just be like, okay, this but blah blah blah. And then you emphasize, this is important, you emphasize the conditions under which you would agree with your opponent. um, I think I've made a typo here. I'm so sorry, but agree with your opponent. um, so basically this so what you can do here, it opens a lot of room for you. What it does is you say that I will agree that bananas are better than apples only if blah blah blah. And now the condition that you can give can be quite ridiculous and something that people wouldn't really want in real life, right? And it'll lead the audience and the judges to think, okay, this condition only works under this circumstance, and this circumstance is quite ridiculous and we don't want it to be true. Therefore the person, yani you, are right and your opponent is wrong and your argument is stronger, right? So that I think that's oops sorry I think that's about it. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask, but yeah.
Woohoo! Guys, I'd really encourage if you ask some questions, please.
Hi, Maheen. I just want to say this was an amazing presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
This was an amazing session. So yeah, you said to ask questions. Basically, with parliamentary debates, I haven't had as much experience as you. But the thing is, I got a little demotivated because there's a difference between debating and just mindlessly arguing. So just people don't want to reach a conclusion through their debates. They just want to give their side of the argument, like just want other people to other people to believe in what they're saying and not listen to their side. So how do you, stay motivated throughout consecutive debates with people, and how do you stop it from turning into like a family debate or a heated conversation? Yeah, that's my question.
I think for me it's much more of, because very often when you go to give parliamentary debates, you don't get to pick the side you're on, right? So sometimes I'm just given this side that I don't want to be on, so इसलिए I don't really have a vow with, oh, this is my personal belief and that's your personal belief. But something that you need to keep in mind when you're giving these debates is very much ke, this is not your personal belief. Yeah, even if it is your personal belief, this is a formal platform, right? So, um, and you need to keep in mind that aggression, of course, is not appreciated. So, even if your opposing party is being aggressive, just like be happy about that because you're just getting plus points, and I stay I'm going to sound like a very competitive and bad person. I apologize. But I stay motivated because I want to win, if that makes sense. um uh but yeah, that's like my motivation. At the end I'll turn out victorious, oh my god. So that.
I like that. I really liked your whole presentation because it was basically 101 tactics of intimidating people. So I really liked it.
It really was like how can you take advantage of the other person, and I think like that is what debating is. But like I need to ask, I'm like very curious. So I'm somebody who really, even if I know that I'm on the right, if it's somebody who comes down into like, when it comes to a debating scenario, I tend to want to avoid it just for the sake of just like not wanting to have that sort of a relationship with anybody. So like what are your advice, what is your advice on that? Like as you guys, you mentioned, you're a people pleaser as well, you like to please everybody. I mean, I think that's it's something similar when it comes to me. I don't want to debate with people just because I don't we don't want I don't want to be in bad terms with anybody. I don't want to risk being in bad terms. So like what are your suggestions? Would you have any suggestions for
I
people like
think
me?
for me, I think it's you need to, of course, people pleasing एक चीज है, but you need to know where to draw the line, right? Like you need to be firm in your opinion about certain things. Like just for me, there are several issues such as chalo, um, let's take really vast ones like homophobia or misogyny, feminism, वगैरह, right? So like if someone doesn't agree with me on something like that, and I know okay this is something that's personally affecting me, like that's where I draw the line. That's where I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not here to please you anymore because this issue personally affects me and you're going against something that's affecting me. So I think you need to know where to draw the line at points, right? And I understand you want to please everyone, but to a large point you need to a large part you need to realize that when you're out there pleasing everyone, you lose who you are and you lose your personality and you lose yourself. So you sometimes you need to say stuff out loud to remember okay, okay, these are my morals and my beliefs. And yeah, so I think you need to state your opinion from time to time, whether it be to someone else or just to yourself, ताकि you remember कि okay, this is who I am, these are my boundaries and I need people to respect them.
Yeah, bilkul, 100% agree on that. Thank you. Anybody else want to ask questions? You only have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to do that. Uske baad Maheen will not, our ever popular Maheen shall be unavailable to you. I'm kidding, she's in the group, you can always message her. Chale, if nobody has any questions, we can call this meeting off. Thank you so much, Maheen. I think बहुत मजा आया. Everybody had a lot of fun. They learned a lot of things. Um, I just want to give like another shout out to Aliza for absolutely firing up the chat box all the time. It's always really nice. We really appreciate that energy. At least I do. और क्या था? या दैट्स इट. थैंक यू सो मच माहीन. मुझे माहीन का भी अपलोड करना है और शयान का भी अपलोड करना है, तो लाइक If I don't do it today, Shayan, you know what to do. मैं जैसे ट्रेलो कार्ड्स नहीं चेक कर रहा था, आप मुझे बता देगा कि मैंने नहीं शेयर किए आप दोनों की वीडियोस. सही है, तो I will do those things today. Just remind me if I don't. ठीक है.